the community.
That sort of feeds into one of my other questions. I want to tie it back to what you mentioned earlier about being accountable to the citizens in the ward. How do you have a plan for empowering the Hispanic community in Ward 14, and how do you expect to be accountable to them?
That's a good question, because in some of in the one endorsement interview that we collectively had with the Plain Dealer, 5 of the 7 of us appeared for that. That question came up, and some of the other candidates talked about a unity, this mythical unity. I lived in the Dominican Republic for 3 years. I lived overseas for 9 years. I was in Central Eastern Europe after Central Caribbean, and unity is an extremely slippery thing to get a hold of. And from the standpoint that the Hispanic community is made up of 30-some countries. Frankly, I was just talking to some Ecuadorians and Colombians yesterday. I've been on some Mexicans' porches. I'm kind of part Dominican, I guess, because of my experience in the Dominican Republic. In Puerto Ricans see Dominicans very different, even though they're not too far away from each other in terms of the island of Hispaniola in Puerto Rico. But so they have their own cultural differences, and of course their own cultural similarities, or things that do tend to unify Hispanics. Some of their health issues, some of their employment challenges, etc., immigration issues. But frankly, that unity, I'm going to look to the strength of the leaders in the community for that, and even the leaders outside the community that are Hispanics working in Lorain County as well, because I give Hispanic leadership, and I say that very broadly, a lot of credit for really doing good outreach and putting their net very wide in terms of embracing Latinos or Hispanics broadly across the region. So I'll look to the leaders in that community to help with that component of it. There's already also very strong institutions locally, Esperanza, the American Spanish Committee, and others that already provide a really good sense of, if you're an Hispanic and you're having problems in some of the traditional systems, come to our organizations and we can help you. So I see my role is really just facilitating in a big way, in ensuring that people know where those services are, and what's important to the Hispanic community, listening and then helping them execute. But frankly, again, it gets back to, let's not fool ourselves, though, that we need an Hispanic candidate for this ward, because 44% of the population is Hispanic. Frankly, when you're on the porches and I do the visual, we're on this porch, I turn around, this is your world, right here, what you see off your porch. Any one of us, that's what we see as our community, is our view off our porch. I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian.
My street, one of my neighbors loves to tell a story about how she calls it the little UN, because it's just, my block is so diverse. There's Asian couples and Hispanic people and African American people and people who've lived in the neighborhood for 63 years and are proudly Polish, and then people who've just moved in like me.
I mean, who would have thought? Who would have thunk that we would go overseas for 9 years, come back, be able to speak Spanish, ¿Cómo está? Bueno, pásame un día. And then we also come back and we see some, older Ukrainian woman or a new Ukrainian family, and we could say, oh, добрый день, я можно говорить по-русски. You come back and, then I talk about, with Hispanics that speak Spanish, I say, bueno, vamos a permíteme para practicar mi español. Hace como 16 años que no hablar español, y vamos a practicar, porque yo soy como el nuevo candidato para Distrito 14. And they kind of chuckle, like, you know, wow, his grammar really sucks and his accent's really bad. And, but then I tell them that, you know, that people are so similar, though. I mentioned in Romanian. I say, you know, oh yeah, I spoke, you know, I speak a little bit of Romanian, some Russian, and Spanish. So I get all these languages in my brain, and it's kind of hard to keep them all straight. So if I throw in a Russian word, I use the word работая, which is work in Russian. And I'll usually say, you know, bueno, yo работаю en la República Dominicana. I say, oh no, yo trabajar en la República Dominicana. I forget. But I tell them that, you know, all these languages and different things, people, like we said earlier, people, they're the same, for goodness sake. Just because the ward is 44% Hispanic, blacks, whites, Asians, Hispanics, they all want the same thing. You know, we said it earlier.
Yeah.
Safety, jobs, better infrastructure, you know, so they're not kicking their tire and bending their rim every winter. So they want the same things. So, you know, the unity is a very elusive thing. It's not going to be my job to ensure the unity, as opposed to making sure that if there are people that have, it goes back to the process, if there are a people, broadly speaking, that have shared interests, shared cultures in the sense of the Hispanic community, that want to make sure that they are heard and helped on their issues. That's my job. The same can go, though, for someone who's on Holden who wants to do a beautification project, such as, you know, I don't know if you were involved in that little planting on the side of I-90 there.
Yeah.
It's great. You know, drivers come into town from Parma and all points south, and they see this beautifully landscaped little, what would you call it? This little pocket landscaped
pocket
area.
Garden. Yeah.
Pocket garden. And but that clearly shows that somebody that lives over that area thought that was pretty important. You know, how can we take this scrappy little corner and make it look better? So, that's I kind of go on about things, but it all relates to the same process: getting people involved and listening to them, and then trying to execute. So.
Well, that's sort of, you're doing really good leading into all my next questions. Right. Do you have any suggestions for how the average citizen can get involved to improve Cleveland?
Very much. You know, couple things I'll try to tick off, maybe be a little bit more concise in my answers. Citizens, residents, businesses that live in the community, one of the first things they can do is understand how the systems work, or in some cases how the systems don't work. So, for example, when I took office, one of the things that we heard at the committee table room was, because I'm printing my card up with all the numbers for the city departments, and someone asked a simple question, you know, tell us the response times for certain issues, whatever. And what we learned quite quickly was if you called the mayor's action line on a problem, and you were in a race, and then your neighbor called the councilman's office for a problem, the mayor's action line is probably going to get the problem solved faster than the council's office. And, you know, very simply, the departments report to the mayor. Makes kind of sense. So what we do is, you know, and I'm doing this right now in Ward 14. I actually show people some of the phone numbers that we have, that we just generally give people, and we try to explain to them, here's who you call to get a problem solved. A lot of people just don't even know that. I swear most people, 90%, 95% of the constituents in the ward don't use our office. They might be touched by the work that we do, but they don't necessarily call our office. So people knowing what to do. We just put out on brooklyncenter.org, one of the civic associations, we put out a research link, like how to research vacant abandoned properties. You know, people call us, what's going on this property? We take 10 minutes on the phone, we find out what's going on, and then we tell them, hey, you know, if you have access to the internet, you can go to this site. All the links are there. What I'm telling you, you can track and keep mindful of as it's going through the foreclosure process.